Quotes and segments from The Porn Myth by Matt Fradd. Thanks to advances in the biological sciences, and especially in neurology, we know that the neurochemicals oxytocin and vasopressin are among the key players in our bodies for creating feelings of strong attachment. For instance, oxytocin is released in a woman's body during birth and breastfeeding, contributing to a strong bond between mother and infant. In human beings, these neurochemicals are released slowly during lovemaking and in large quantities during orgasm, neurologically bonding a person's memories to the source of sexual pleasure. A study published in 2006 found in obese people shrinkage in the frontal lobes very similar to that found in cocaine and methamphetamine addicts. A study published in 2007 discovered the same kind of brain damage in persons who exhibited severe sexual addiction. So we have 4 studies, 2 drug and 2 natural addiction studies, all done in different academic institutions by different research teams, and published over a 5-year period in 4 different peer-reviewed scientific journals. And all 4 studies show that addictions physically affect the frontal lobes of the brain. Personal note: prefrontal brain affected by drugs, food, sex. From Jenna Jemison, these guys didn't care about seeing a show, they just wanted to see some skin. So much for my delusion of actually being respected in the world at large. Her book reveals that such reflections do not come easily. Travel is a major staple of my life. It seems it's all I do. I'm not sure the effect it's having on me. I guess I haven't taken the time to reflect. Obviously, that's one of the major problems. Reflection. I close myself off, not wanting to let what's in the mirror of my life stare back at me. I never take the time to feel the effects of my choices. Maybe it's because I would be ashamed, maybe afraid. I realize I have avoided my pain for as long as I can remember, as passing by me all the while my soul goes on with sickness. Yes, sickness, the one that should be nursing it is too busy, trying to succeed and be accepted. I'm certainly scared that if I try to fix what has broken in me so long ago, I may not succeed. So I go on faking that I am whole, proud, and strong. I almost laughed aloud when I turned my head down to wipe my tears on my shirt and saw the pen I was pouring my pain through. It's a Radisson Hotel pen. Point taken. From Robert Weiss, debunking David J. Lay's The Myth of Sex Addiction. Like all process or behavioral addictions, sex addiction is a process that utilizes fantasy-based euphoria and ritualistic behavior to escape and/or manage what feel like intolerable emotions, stressors, and psychological conditions. Sex addicts engage in their addictive behaviors as a temporary distraction from loneliness, low self-esteem, depression, and other triggers related to past emotional and/or physical trauma. In order to understand why sex can become an addiction, one first needs to understand why things like drugs are addictive. The very reason drugs are addictive at all is because they trick the brain. They activate the brain's natural neural pathways, which are involved in reinforcement and pleasure. Neuroscientist Dr. William Struthers says that pornography hijacks the brain in the same way. It tricks the brain into thinking it is getting sex, and, like a drug, the forced high can become a deadly habit. In other words, pornography can make us addicted to our own neurochemistry. Pornography triggers powerful neurotransmitters, such as epinephrine, also known as dopamine, and others, so that when pornography is used compulsively, it becomes addictive. In 2011, the American Society of Addiction Medicine modified its definition of addiction, saying that it is a primary, chronic disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. This new definition now includes, for the first time, behavioral addictions, not merely substance abuse. This is why the ASAM now considers sex addiction a possibility, though sex is. From Donald L. Hilton Jr. in Slave Master, How Pornography Drugs and Changes Your Brain. Dopamine is essential for humans to desire and value appropriate pleasure in life. Without it, we would not be as incentivized to eat, procreate, or even to try to win a game. It's the overuse of the dopamine reward system that causes addiction. When the pathways are used compulsively, a downgrading occurs that actually decreases the amount of dopamine in the pleasure areas available for use, and the dopamine cells themselves start to atrophy or shrink. The reward cells in the nucleus accumbens are now starved for dopamine and exist in a state of dopamine craving, as a down receptors on the pleasure cells occurs as well. This resetting of the pleasure thermostat produces a new normal. In this addictive state, the person must act out in addiction to boost the dopamine to levels sufficient just to feel normal. The porn addict needs to watch more porn, or more hardcore porn, to get the same high he could get with smaller doses. He said that the dopamine reward system is involved in not only drug addiction but also natural addiction, that is, the compulsive consumption of a natural reward, such as the pleasure of eating food or having sex. Internet overuse has been shown to impair cognitive function, decision-making, information integration, working memory, and impulse control. Perhaps the most telling of all these studies is one from 2000 entitled Pornography and Sexual Aggression by Malamuth, Addison, and Koss. In preparation for their research, the authors reviewed past studies on the issue. From Linda M. Jones et al. In Trends in Youth Internet Victimization. Findings from 3 Youth Internet Safety Surveys, 2000-2010, Cyber Psychology and Behavior, released the results of a study showing that 93% of boys and 62% of girls in the United States see porn before the age of 18, and many of these exposures are not shut the laptop and walk away glimpses, but porn binges. According to the 2010 Youth Internet Safety Survey, a quarter of U.S. teens are exposed to porn online when they aren't even looking for it. The majority of the pornography consumed is accessed on mobile devices. An estimated 81% of teens own smartphones, and a smartphone without restrictions amounts to an X-rated theater in your pocket. Authoritative parents use discipline to instill character in their children. Authoritarian parents use harsh chastisement to coerce and to control their children, and, when that fails, to inflict pain on their children to get revenge. Authoritative parents accompany their discipline and instruction with high levels of warmth and grace. Authoritative parents are often cold and distant. Authoritative parents allow children to question the rules because they know that dialogue is part of the learning process. Authoritarian parents are unresponsive to a child's needs and questions. Porn and the brain. When researchers compared brain scans of porn users with scans of non-users, they found that the more porn the person had used, the less his reward center activated when porn images were flashed on a screen. The researchers said, this is in line with the hypothesis that intense exposure of pornographic stimuli results in a downregulation of the natural neural response to sexual stimuli. From Simone Kuhn and Jürgen Gallinet, Brain Structure and Functional Connectivity Associated with Pornography Consumption. The Brain on Porn. People with internet addiction have been found to have less gray matter in several important areas of the brain, including the frontal lobes, which oversee things such as planning, prioritizing, and controlling impulses, the striatum, and the insula. The vast majority of people with porn addictions have internet addictions. From Matthias Brand, Kimberly S. Young, and Christian Lyer, Prefrontal Control and Internet Addiction. A Theoretical Model and Review of Neuropsychological and Neuroimaging Findings, Frontiers in Human Neuroscience 8, doi 10. 38914-00375. Personal notes. The porn weakener, frontal lobe and empathy, like in other addictions. In 2005, Dr. Eric Nestler wrote a landmark paper describing addiction as a dysfunction of the reward centers of the brain. Addiction occurs, he explained, when pleasure reward pathways are hijacked by certain euphoria-inducing activities such as eating, taking drugs, or having sex. From Clark Watts and Donald L. Hilton, Pornography Addiction, A Neuroscience Perspective, Surgical Neurology International, 2-1 Porn and emotional health studies have found that frequency of porn use correlates with depression, anxiety, stress, and social problems. From Michael E. Levin, et al., When is online pornography viewing problematic among college males? The moderating role of experiential avoidance, sexual addiction, and compulsivity. Dopamine significantly affects our motivation to pursue goals and build relationships, so when the brain can't feel dopamine's effects as well, our interest in doing those things can start to slide. Studies have found that porn use is correlated with having less sexual and relationship satisfaction and changed sexual tastes. Like gluttony, studies have found that porn use is correlated with lowered quality of life and poorer health. Studies have found that porn use is correlated with intimacy problems. Researchers at Oxford University found that moderate to severe internet addiction is associated with increased risk of harming oneself. Even moderate porn use is correlated with damage to parts of the brain involved with motivation and decision-making. Researchers have also found that moderate porn use is correlated with shrunken gray matter in parts of the brain that oversee cognitive function. A study that looked at internet addicts found that they suffered from negative moods when they went offline. Researchers in Belgium looked at 14-year-old boys' academic performance twice and compared the two scores. They found that an increased use of pornography decreased boys' academic performance 6 months later. Porn and sexual taste studies have found that porn use is correlated with less sexual and relationship satisfaction and changed sexual tastes. Sexual interests are conditionable. We can train them, as Pavlov trained a dog to salivate when it heard a bell. The brain's reward center doesn't know the difference between porn that's acceptable to use and porn that's not cool. All it knows is that it likes dopamine. So, when something sick or disturbing pops up and is linked with sexual arousal, the brain stores the connection. Neurons that fire together wire together, and feeling pleasure in the presence of causes it to get wired into the brain as a source of delight. User builds up tolerance. The pleasure of sexual discharge must be supplemented with the pleasure of an aggressive release, and sexual and aggressive images are increasingly mingled, hence the increase in sadomasochistic themes in hardcore porn. Researchers have found that women become less sexually aroused by repeated viewing of the same porn, but become aroused again when novel porn is introduced. In a 2012 NoFap poll of users, more than half of the respondents agreed with the statement, "My tastes became increasingly extreme or deviant." In a study, researchers found that when male subjects saw the same porn film repeatedly, they were progressively less aroused by it. When researchers introduced a new video after 18 viewings of the old one, subjects' arousal spiked. Personal note: novelty stimulates dopamine. When a person uses porn, his brain wires together what is seen with the feelings of arousal it creates, building new brain maps for both what he thinks is sexy and what he expects from his partner. Personal note: porn rewires brain. Researchers have found that the younger the age of first porn use, the more likely a porn consumer is to use bestiality or child porn. Personal notes: dopamine is related to novelty and expectancy. Endorphin is related to actual satisfaction. Porn and sexual violence. In a meta-analysis of 46 studies published from 1962 to 1995, comprising a total sample of 12,323 people, researchers concluded that pornographic material puts one at increased risk of the following: developing sexually deviant tendencies, committing sexual offenses, accepting rape myths. According to a study of domestic violence victims, battery cases include sexual violence when pornography is involved. The batterer's use of pornography and alcohol significantly increases a battered woman's odds of being sexually abused. Pornography alone increases the odds of sexual violence by a factor of almost 2, 40% of abused. To add insult to injury, many wives are directly or indirectly blamed for their husband's pornography use by her spouse, family, or confidant. Many women I have worked with clinically describe stinging insinuations that the marriage must be unsatisfying, that she has let herself go and is no longer as physically attractive as she once was, that she is closed-minded to new sexual experiences, or that she is overly focused on her children and not attending to her husband's needs. Too often, the woman's experience of the marital relationship and the historical context of his pornography habit become conveniently dismissed as irrelevant by those seeking to assign blame to her. Among attorneys at the November 2002 meeting of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, 62% said the internet had been a significant factor in divorces they had handled during that year. Of those cases, 56% involved one person having an obsessive interest in internet porn. In a study of wives of sex addicts for whom pornography use was an issue in their relationship with their spouses, 68.18% had experienced a form of isolation during the course of dealing with the problem. What was interesting was that many of the women reported having strong networks of support and family ties, but described being isolated due to the shameful nature of this particular problem. This suggests women who are high-functioning and well-supported in other areas of life may still be at risk for isolation, delayed help-seeking behavior, and/or prolonged psychological struggle because the problem is so shaming and public awareness of it is in its infancy. In addition, isolation can put women at risk for heightened psychological stress and turmoil if they are used to receiving support in other areas of life, thereby making this population more vulnerable overall. Many women who learn of a partner's compulsive pornography use or other sexual addictions experience psychological effects such as fatigue, changes in appetite and libido, and other signs of anxiety and depression, such as suicidal tendencies. A study of 100 women who were or had been in relationships with male pornography users found that women in married relationships commonly view internet pornography consumption as a substantial threat to the marriage. Their distress increased according to how frequent they believed their husband's online sexual activities were, and their feelings were not significantly influenced by religious beliefs. Marriages in which one partner has a pornography problem or sexual compulsion are commonly plagued by problems with diminished intimacy and sensitivity, anxiety, secrecy, isolation, relationship dysfunction, and decreased financial security due to the risk of job loss or related debts. Adult exposure to pornography is associated with greater acceptance of having affairs for married individuals. Porn and adolescence. It's easier for someone to recover from having his sexual tastes altered when those altered tastes were acquired as an adult than it is for someone who acquired problematic sexual tastes during his critical periods of development in youth and adolescence. A study of Greek youth found that adolescents exposed to pornography may develop unrealistic attitudes about sex and misleading attitudes toward relationships. A study that looked at middle school youth found that exposure to pornography predicted perpetration of sexual harassment in boys, more permissive sexual norms, engaging in oral sex, and engaging in intercourse in high school. Longitudinal studies have linked heavy exposure to sexual mainstream media with earlier sexual activity, earlier coital behavior, and increased risk for unplanned pregnancy and sexually transmitted disease. Not only younger children, but even young teenagers are generally not sophisticated enough to differentiate between fantasy and reality. They learn direct lessons from pornography, with no filter, and with no concept of exaggeration, irony, or effect. They learn what women supposedly look like, how they should act, and what they are supposed to do. They learn what women want and how men can give it to them. Watching pornography, boys and girls learn that women always want sex and that sex is divorced from relationships. They learn that men can have whomever they want and that women will respond the way men want them to. They learn that anal sex is the norm and orgasm is to be expected. And they absorb these lessons avidly, emulating people they perceive to be role models. It's sad that boys who are initiated to sex through these images become indoctrinated in a way that can potentially stay with them for the rest of their lives. Boys learn that you have sex in spite of your feelings, not because of your feelings. Meanwhile, girls are taught that you don't have intimacy without relationships. Porn shuts down a boy's natural feeling, as it places little value on intimacy, empathy, or respect of partners in pornographic material. A growing body of research also shows that viewing porn is likely to make boys more sexually aggressive, to do whatever they feel they can get away with, and to want to act out what they have seen. Personal note: porn objectifies. It lowers empathy, mental health, destroys families, and true love. Together, these brain studies found the following. Subjects showed the three major addiction-related brain changes: sensitization, desensitization, and hypofrontality. More porn use correlated with less gray matter in the reward circuit. More porn use correlated with less reward circuit activation when subjects briefly viewed sexual images. More porn use correlated with disrupted neural connections between the reward circuit and prefrontal cortex, Addicts had greater prefrontal activity to sexual cues, but less brain activity to normal. Porn addicts in one study experienced ED, or low libido with partners but not with porn. All stated that internet porn use caused their ED or low libido. Enhanced attentional bias was comparable to that of drug users. This indicates sensitization. Greater desire and craving for porn but not greater liking aligns with the accepted model of addiction. Addiction. Incentive sensitization. Porn addicts have greater preference for sexual novelty, yet their brains habituated faster to sexual images. Not pre-existing. The younger the porn users, the greater the cue-induced reactivity in the reward center. EEG readings were higher when porn users were exposed to porn cues. Less desire for sex with a person correlating with greater cue reactivity to porn images. More porn use correlated with lower LPP amplitude when subjects briefly viewed sexual photos, indicating habituation or desensitization. Dysfunctional HPA axis reflects altered brain stress circuits, which occurs in drug addiction. Here are some book resources. Here are some online resources. Thank you for watching.